My name is Ada Monzón. I'm Chief Meteorologist for WIPR-TV and WKAQ 580 AM and Noticel, but I'm also the president and founder of the first science museum of Puerto Rico, EcoExploratorio. I was humbled to be part of the second Naturally Latinos conference sponsored by the Audubon Naturalist Society. Getting this group of organizations, nonprofits, we all have the same goal. We want to educate people, we want to empower people with the education. We want to establish a better relationship with nature and our built environment. And this conference provides the platform so that all of these people connect and create a network. People in Puerto Rico, they all tell me their story. I'm here telling you all our stories so that you understand what it's like to live and survive a catastrophic hurricane.
We're honored to have you all here. Thank you very much and welcome. You just don't understand. She is a rock star. She is the premier meteorologist in Puerto Rico. She is founder of a science museum, and she's here to talk with us today. Thank you so much, Ada Monzón.
What a beautiful crowd. Good morning. Well, this is going to be, a little emotional presentation, but I am happy to be here, especially joined by so many beautiful people and wonderful people like Isha Renta, like Brenda, like Edith, like Joseph and Serenela, and all of you. Thank you so much for this invitation. I would like to thank the Audubon Naturalist Society for this invitation to tell the story of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has been in the news in the last 24 hours. I don't know if you have been following it. We're still struggling with funding and priorities, and in the meantime, thousands of people are still living under blue tarps, and basic services are needed. So we need compassion and empathy through this process. There were two kinds of suffering in Puerto Rico: the ones that were in the island during the hurricanes, and the ones that were outside in the United States, suffering what was happening in the island because they couldn't connect. We couldn't communicate. We couldn't communicate from 1 mile from each other. So as a meteorologist, as a broadcaster, as a science communicator, as an informal educator, as a friend, I can tell you that this has been the most difficult experience I've ever had to face in my 30 years as a forecaster. I've learned that I'm not longer the broadcast meteorologist, but I'm the friend. Last night, I was at the airport. I came in JetBlue, and it was crowded with Puerto Ricans. They were coming to an activity here related to health community centers. And it was very interesting because I was talking to everyone, and someone approached me from the States, and he asked me, "Who are you? Everyone seems to gravitate around you." I said, well, this is the story. Everyone needs to tell their story, and they want to tell me because I was part of their lives during Hurricane Maria, and they need to tell me what happened. So that's what's happening. No one asks my story. I need to listen to everyone's stories. And it's very good to be part of the healing process like that. So this story is important to tell because now we're victims of climate change. We are. And it doesn't look good. And I'm going to tell you what climate change looks like. I was scared and terrified. And I prayed that I always had the right words to make people understand what we were about to face before the hurricane and what was needed to do in order to be safe and avoid death. Unfortunately, we didn't have what it takes to do that. We couldn't face the challenges that a catastrophic situation like a Category 4 or 5 hurricane means. We did not have enough funding for emergency resources and to respond or recover from a catastrophic hurricane. There was a complete breakdown in terms of communications between state, municipal, and federal government. But worst of all, most people underestimated the strength of the hurricane and could not believe that a hurricane category 5 hurricane was coming our way. Imagine if you find out that in 7 days or 5 days or 3 days you're facing a category 5 hurricane. Would you believe it? Those are the things that go through your mind. So this was all a recipe for a disaster. The severity of Hurricane Maria brought a collapse in Puerto Rico like we have never experienced before. The last 18 months since September 20th, 2017, it has been a very turbulent journey for all of us. The economy and the infrastructure system are very weak. We hope that with all the funding that is coming in and the insurance proceeds, we can rebuild our island. We have put together through hard work the collaboration of many NGOs, foundations, and government efforts. Teaching and learning about the world we use now, resilience, has helped us to cope and respond and recover faster and safer, and has helped us to deal with the horrible consequences of Maria and start rebuilding our lives. When you're a victim of a disaster, especially of catastrophic proportions, you need a support system to keep you going forward. It takes emotional strength to cope with every situation that happens to you, to the ones you love, your friends, and your community. This healing process takes time, and still today, it's well into our hearts. And our children and youth have endured difficult times, but at least they're thinking outside of the box, and better yet, some have broken the box. Recently, I was at a regional fair of the science regional fair in Humacao, which is in the southeast portion of the island, right where the Ide made landfall. And all I saw was wonderful projects. And I every time I asked one kids, what was your source of inspiration? They would say Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Maria. So they're looking at finding solutions to problems. And isn't that what we really want for our future generations to think? Putting the scientific method to the benefit for their communities? Let's look now then at the meteorological life of Hurricane Maria and Hurricane Irma. The period between September 1st and September 20th of 2017 changed our life forever. Two hurricanes category 5, not one, two category 5 hurricanes were coming our way. They neared Puerto Rico in less than 2 weeks, back to back. First was Irma, and then Hurricane Maria. Of the two, Hurricane Maria was the most devastating. And it decimated the island, the first time in almost 100 years. In summary, we had sustained winds of 155 miles per hour, near 40 inches of rain, over 40,000 landslides, and 2,975 deaths. I should emphasize that people died in hospitals and homes because of lack of energy. The energy destroyed us. It was not just Maria. The winds destroyed the energy system destroyed our health system, and that's how it worked. There were not enough generators, there were no fuel for generators, cars, vehicles, trucks, and we could not even communicate with truck drivers. People were on their own or with their neighbors, surviving. All basic services of the island collapsed. 100% of the electrical power was down. There were no water services, and all communications were gone. The strength of this hurricane compared only in trajectory to Hurricane San Felipe in 1928. This signature picture of San Felipe showing a piece of wood through a palm tree in Caguas because of hurricane winds repeated in Maria, and we found it in Dorado. It was a terrifying 8-hour journey of the eye through the island, and near 36 hours of tropical storm and hurricane winds. We lost all our weather data. We lost the history of Hurricane Maria. And we had serious damage in our Doppler radar. We lost our Doppler radar. I'll show you in a second. And that feeling of being helpless is very difficult to handle, and it was extremely frustrating. Our forecast and delivery message were perfect and unprecedented. There was a consistent message through the media, and both the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center did a wonderful job. I dedicated myself and all my communication resources to getting a message out in radio, television, newspaper, social media. Every 3 hours, I was doing a Facebook Live and Twitter Live that had over 31 million views in the month of September. But even with all this communication and meteorological work that we all did, we could not avoid the immense consequences of this hurricane in our island. However, I know that the forecast saved many lives. After the hurricane, I moved to the government command center, and I switched from being a meteorologist to a journalist supporting the response and the recovery process. While on the field, I saw firsthand the devastation and suffering. And let me tell you that this experience changed me forever. The worst wind damage was in the landfall area toward the southeast part of the island and in the municipalities along the mountain range. Just to let you know that 75% of Puerto Rico consists of hills or mountains with a maximum altitude of 4,383 feet. So winds in these altitudes were like category 5. So we can say that Hurricane Maria was a category 5 because still the way that it hit the island is very hard for people to even make a presentation and say this was a category 4. It could be worse. You know, what do you do with that message? So the most direct damages were observed in structures that were not built according to code. This is the pressure graph. We had 926 millibars toward the landfall location. Okay, so let's see what this looked like. Can we raise the volume, please? So you had a lot of crosswinds, perhaps because of some vortices or tornadoes. So that's the storm surge coming in. The streets turned to rivers. So this is right afterwards. I was in some of these municipalities and you just couldn't believe. It was just unbelievable. And people today still don't understand the magnitude of the storm. Sometimes I do presentations in different parts of the islands, and when they see pictures or videos, it's like, really, that happened? Because we lost communications. We couldn't watch TV. We didn't know what was going on. You knew more than we knew because all the images were projected to the United States, but we didn't. So look at this, the force of the wind. This is the roof of the neighbor that came in and broke the iron bars. And this is also another video showing how the wood got into the ground. And look at another palm tree also that has a wood piece going through the trunk. You're gonna see it in a couple of minutes. This was in Utuado. There you go. But what is interesting, that is slanted. It came like that from underneath. So this is the Doppler radar. This is what it looked like. That's how it actually looked like after the hurricane. So the dome was gone, the antenna was gone, and then the tower was like tilted. And now it's back again. So the most direct damages were observed in structures that were not built according to code, windows and doors that were not hurricane resistant, structures in elevated terrain that were not able to sustain more than 155-mile-an-hour wind. In Puerto Rico, it's very common to build a second-story house in wood frame and metal ceiling over concrete masonry house. El Yunque, our 30,000-acre tropical forest, it has been very hard to come back. 1 in 10 trees died at El Yunque rainforest. It was like a bomb hit. Everything was like toothpicks. They were all brown, no leaves. The lush landscapes turned brown and silent. Silence. That was very scary. Not hearing birds, not hearing anything. So the process of regeneration, is back, but it's halted because now we're in a drought. Now instead of every 10 years having some kind of drought, now it's every 5 years. So right after the hurricane, now we're back with 80% of the island in a drought. So it is not clear what will happen to our ecosystems, such as El Yunque, because of all these changes. And you go there and the tree canopy is gone. You know that everything is growing back from the ground up, but that's how it looked like. There were 460 birds in captivity at breeding centers. I'm talking about the parrots, the Puerto Rico Amazon. Our endangered parrot, half of the population disappeared. 2 of the 56 wild species in El Yunque survived. 2 out of 56. 4 out of 31 survived in Maricao, and 75 out of 134 are in central Puerto Rico survived. So it was nature, it was structure, it was everything, it was people. All the power transmission towers, television, radio, communication towers that are located in the mountains, so everything was destroyed. The trees, more than 75% of them lost their foliage, and about 50% of them were uprooted. Palm trees, especially in Humacao, were snapped, torn, and even some of them found a way to fly. It was like a huge tornado. EF4 went through Puerto Rico from one side to the other. This is our chemistry lab in El Yunque was gone. This is the school system was gone. And in our visits in Humacao, Yabucoa, and Cayey, many reported tornadoes or vortices, and storm chasers confirmed at least 3. This is our energy grid system, as you can tell. That's why we couldn't get energy. In my house, it took about 4 months. Some people, it took about, as a matter of fact, June or July last year, we had the entire island with electricity. So this was right after the hurricane. You see the concrete poles, the wooden poles, everything was completely destroyed. All our communication towers, people, wherever they can find some kind of signal, they would align along the express, the autopista, highway. And we are now looking into new energy systems. As a matter of fact, as of yesterday, the Senate of Puerto Rico and the legislature passed the project 1121, which moves Puerto Rico into renewables, and now we have a path. The worst, we're very happy about that. Thank goodness. because what we have right now is what we had before. And if we have a hurricane right and this hurricane season, we will be in the same position as we were before Hurricane Maria. So, and it takes time. It's a process. It's not easy to make these changes. But we are using the model of Hawaii to do the path toward renewables. So this is storm surge. Storm surge was estimated between 6 to 9 feet in Humacao. That's the hardest community in Puerto Rico. Most people evacuated, but the ones that stayed are telling the most horrifying stories that I have ever heard. Out of the 1,225 beaches in Puerto Rico, 60% now have severe or moderate erosion. And you can tell. But so this is a combination of many things. This is a combination of sea level rise, swell events during the winters, and now Hurricane Maria. So now, water is coming in further and further and further, and it's not allowing for all of these areas to be able to flourish again. What are going to happen to these buildings? I don't know. I don't know the answer. But people are relocated, and those areas, are not livable anymore. So this is in the San Juan metro area, and you can tell that water came in through the entire area. We had rainfall amounts around 38 inches in 2 days. Our bridges, most of our bridges were gone. So that also complicated the way that the supplies were, distributed across the island. Those are horses there, and this video is taken from the second floor. This is in Tua Baja. All the first floors were flooded. We lost cows, we lost horses, we lost chickens, we lost, everything. In terms of landslides, that was very bad. Many people died because of landslides. In Utuado, which is in the center part of the island, every 100 feet we had a landslide. And it was very difficult because we lost all our roads to distribute all the supplies, as you can tell from that image. And that happens, in areas where you have mountains. If it happened in Hawaii, it would be the same story. But what concerns me now is that look at all these houses, and most of them, because they're located in mountains, they have these poles, and now there's no ground beneath it to stabilize. So if we have an earthquake now, and we're a very seismic active area, then we will have many problems because the grounds are not stable. How did that car came into that swimming pool? Because of the force of the water and the land that pushed the car into the swimming pool. So we had energy issues, communication issues, health, housing, water supplies, financial services, search and rescue, environment, education, public safety, infrastructure, human services. All of the emergency functions were somehow hurt because of the storm. Now, this is a story about Hurricane Maria. It's in Spanish, so I'm going to translate. So I went out a month after the hurricane, and I asked, so how are you? How are you dealing with this? And I asked children, and perhaps this is the most difficult for me to listen. Her name is Jocelyn. She's 7 years old, and I asked her how she was doing, and she said, not good. I thought I was going to drown. The water was coming fast. But when her family started praying, the water started to recede. And thank goodness we are alive. That interview transformed me and fueled my desire to drastically change the way that we educate and communicate. We could no longer stand by and observe. We had to be proactive. Our team of the Science Museum of Puerto Rico, the EcoExploratorio, did not stand by. Science was put to service for the benefit of our communities around 3 weeks after the hurricane. So we had a goal. We wanted to make our children resilient. How? Through the Science Museum. This is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that I founded 9 years ago. I'm the president of the board of directors and a volunteer. Through grants and sponsors since 2014, we established a pop-up museum and a concept as a shopping center, and we now have 2 science exhibits about the oceans and planet Earth. My dream is for the museum to be built at the Puerto Rico Convention District, and we are finishing the lease agreement for the land, and then we're writing proposals for the funding to build and operate the first science museum of Puerto Rico. After the hurricane, we developed a science and education program, a science and community education program. And community is a very important word to be included right next to science. We brought science education and innovation as part of the response and recovery process. People needed to understand what happened and talk about it. We became the glue that helped with the healing process and became the bridge between science and community. We took the museum outside of the walls and went to the most severely devastated areas. Initially, we started Project Inspiration. We went to 13 municipalities and brought science activities at the government's designated assistance sites known as Stop and Go centers. We are now using STEM to bring social innovation. We're putting science to the service of the community, and we're using science as a healing process. And our first goal, of course, is STEM education, but number 2 goal is natural hazard resiliency and mitigation. This is where we want to build in the convention district, and we have some preliminary designs. And this was our response to Hurricane Maria. We work on the emergency distribution centers. We made free entrance to the museum space in Plaza Las Americas. We brought humanitarian aid to most devastated communities, and we established the Resilient School Program. We now have a weather network, weather stations across the island, and now we're building the seismic network for schools. So being in community centers and looking at children was devastating. We made these very simple, science notebooks, and we taught children how to clean water, how to understand what nature was going through. So we were inspiring. We were part of the community. We needed to be in the community because we all needed to be next to each other. Yeah. So this is our Resilient School Program. We now have project-based learning activities for different grades, where we talk about renewable energy, water purification, resilient cities, reforestation, science communication, and we have teacher and student guides. We bring mobile exhibition to schools. We have CERT for teens. Are you aware for what CERT is? That's a program that is by FEMA and the emergency management. It's community emergency response teams. That is very important to teach our children to be CERT, to be part of this program. We're teaching our teachers to be amateur radio operators. We have discovered all these networks that you can establish in communities, where community leaders can have these artifacts and they communicate between each other. And that is like communication systems that are for the communities, and you don't depend on cell phones or satellite communications or things that are very expensive. Actually, you can get them through Amazon and you're fine. So this was our journey, and this has been our journey with emergency backpacks, bringing all this science to the communities. And teachers need that. I was sitting there right now and I was receiving a letter from a school that they needed a food processor, and they needed things they were looking for a donation for helping some kids that have special needs, and they wanted to know if the museum could help them. So these are the kinds of things that are still happening right now, because schools are still using electric generators. Some of them, not all. So those are the kinds of things that are still happening, and that's why we need help and we need the funding to recuperate. So where are the opportunities? How do you restart Puerto Rico? So the hurricane exposed many weaknesses at various levels, but there are unique opportunities in areas such as energy, microgrids, transportation, medical services, coastal management, weather and hydrological instrumentation. Enduring two major hurricanes has been hard, but at the same time, it has served a vast lesson to our society. We need to find a way to live with natural disasters for tackling potential catastrophic events, and we need to work harder as scientists to educate our people through all means of communications and especially social media. These are publications that I have been doing for more than 20 years, and I just reprint them. This year, another 10,000, and they all go. We just hope that by this resilient school program, that we realize by an evaluation that we develop 100% resilience between much and very much, and the effectiveness index was 93 and 95 percent in effectiveness. We just hope that what we're doing is helping children to be more resilient. We now have Expo Planeta Digital from April 8th through 4th. This is a 1-week community STEM fair that we take into Plaza Las Americas. And we hope that what we're doing for them really pays off for their resilience. Hurricanes are natural hazards, but the disaster is related to the actions people and communities take. I don't think that as a society, we need to accept the increase of death and damages due to weather or climate change. We need to allocate more resources to emergency management, community leaders, schools, and local government. Our experience and relationship with nature has changed. It is affecting all of us, and we need to build healthier and more equitable communities. We need to educate people. Our children need to be first responders, and we need to create networks to save each other. We need to emphasize not in self-reliance, but also in community reliance. Education is the best way to empower communities so that they can take control and shape the future. Government cannot respond to disasters in the immediate way. Communities need to be empowered with education, and we need to be aware, especially of the elderly, the poor, the children, and the physically and emotionally disabled. In Puerto Rico, those communities that have organized, developed plans, and taken control are now more resilient than ever. And to me, that is unprecedented. Our museum, in partnership with foundation, government, volunteers, is more aware of the local context and is playing a role in building and contributing to the society. We are using STEM to build resilience. We are rebuilding communities and lives. We are promoting social cohesion, a bonding that is very much needed after a catastrophic disaster. And we're focusing on the topics that are important to every child, parent, and teacher. I don't think I cannot allow, and any of us can allow our future generation without knowing how to face these hazards again, how to protect their lives, how to respect the forces of the planet, and how to build safer and better. I think we need to rewrite all the hurricane preparedness because we're facing more catastrophic hurricanes. We are. And the emotional toll is not well understood. And that is not part of the hurricane preparedness manual that you receive every year to prepare for hurricanes. So, in summary, we need to do better, but we need to keep saving lives. And if everything else collapses around us, at least we know we have the strength and the opportunity to keep going forward because time will take care of the rest. Thank you so much.
I told you to be yourself, so I guess I'm leading by example. We were glued to what she was saying. We were glued to her every word and to all the news because our family was there and we couldn't know. By many days, we couldn't know what was happening. So thank you. On behalf of the diaspora, thank you. So I told my Puerto Rican conference planner, be prepared, bring some tissues. Ada's gonna need them. I think I'm gonna need them more than her anyway. But I also am very fortunate to work here because Audubon rallied around me and supported me through this difficult process. So yes, this place, it's a true testament of how we really want to serve our community and what's the support that should be giving to our people. So thank you again. And with that, does anybody would like to ask any questions?
Primero que nada, Ada, te quiero decir que gracias por tu servicio. Eres un orgullo para la gente de Puerto Rico. I'd like to follow up a little bit on what Serenela said in terms of, those of us in the diaspora would like to, that are also in environmental organizations that are working at the intersection of social justice, environmental justice, energy, resilience, equity, all of the check boxes that are basically checked off in the case of Puerto Rico with the climate crisis and the fiscal crisis. How can we make ourselves most useful? Not just us in the diaspora, but also all the countless advocates who may not be Latinos, who may not be people of color, but are thirsty and see all the injustices that have led to all of this. How can we be most useful here in the diaspora, in our organizations, in a way that's honest, that takes into account the needs of the people of Puerto Rico?
Making sure that, we have many issues in the island right now, many issues. We have very strong forces between FEMA, the government, the local government, and the federal government. Differences in the way that things are done, priorities, lack of empathy, and I don't know how to solve that except to work at the local level. I cannot control the federal, I cannot control what the president and the governor, what they do or talk or not talk, but I can take care of my children, I can take care of my communities, I can take care of what's around me. That's where I make a difference. And that's what I want you to make a difference, to keep the conversation going, to think of projects that will bring more strength in terms of the environment, in terms of the education for different groups. Also, something I learned is that you cannot think of the entire island. You have to think about specific communities. And perhaps if you think of projects, if you think of funding for projects, please let me know. I can help in that sense, but in terms of what's going on up here, I don't know how to solve it. I just can't. We are all suffering that in our every news, in our every day. And I work for a news department, and I just have to disconnect sometimes because it's just too much.
Do you find that the resilience that you're able to build through your science teaching is making them more impassioned scientists?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because yes, we first, because of the project, the Resilience School program, we have 17 schools, which I didn't mention. There are 17 schools that we're doing that, and although we don't have any more funding for the schools, we find funding through projects to bring them to schools. So we keep building their capacities, and the teachers and children, it's a process. It's a healing process. Recently, we had an earthquake in Puerto Rico. It was a minor earthquake. It's a 4.7, but it was in the surface. So it was really felt. So right after that earthquake, there was a tsunami wave, a tsunami exercise. The children couldn't do the exercise because they were all crying. So they asked me to come to with the museum to come to the school. And it was amazing because now there's no difference in their mind about a hurricane and an earthquake. They all know that this is scary. And, you know, it's going to take time, but at least we're talking about it. They know that they have a support system. Their parents are part of the process. It's not only teachers. So we bring parents to the, I mean, not all parents show up, but at least the ones that show up and have interest, they come. I've learned that you cannot change everyone. And you have to respect the dignity of people. If you don't want to change, that's fine. Because we went into communities where, you know, your house is about to fall from the landslide and they want to live there and you don't want to leave, then fine. You change people that want to change. And the easiest crowd are the children. And the better, because those are the future generations. So we are not only talking about 6 years old and 7-year-olds. We're talking about 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, the ones that are going to the university. Those are the ones that are proposing the changes. Those are the ones that were in the science fair. That's the child that wanted to build a solar traffic light because she saw so many accidents at the intersection of her house because of the lack of the traffic light. Those are the children that are making the difference. We now have a lot of hackathons. You know what hackathons are? So we have a lot of hackathons because we want people to think about problems and then find solutions. I think we're moving into the right direction. Is that it's very slow because even in our best interest, you know, getting the decision makers to do the things they want or are needed without the funding is just impossible. But I think we're making a difference.
I know that you're deep in it still with trying to restore the island and build resilience. Have you managed to build any alliances with other islands within the Caribbean to learn of some best practices for other islands that have been affected?
The Caribbean suffered a lot. There's some islands that were spared in 2017, but all our neighbor islands, like the St. Thomas and St. Croix, they were destroyed, especially St. Thomas, which are our partners in crime in all of this, because the Virgin Islands, through VITEMA and through the government, you know, we, in Puerto Rico, we received the victims of Hurricane Irma, and then we were the victims of Hurricane Maria. So it was a very difficult situation. But yes, there are many conversations. Of course, I'm not part of them. But for example, last week, I was at a conference. There are a lot of conferences. That's very interesting because now we have resilience conference here, resilience conference there, but different aspect, health, energy. And we had one that Anderson Cooper, as a matter of fact, was the moderator of the morning program. And it was very interesting. The name was Black Start. And because of the black start, we had to start from black. And it was very interesting the way that we are using models from other islands, especially Hawaii, but especially for the microgrid systems and for all of these things that are part of the future that we want to have. Because we cannot build something like we had before. History is not our best model. We need now to think about future. What is the best practice? What are the best practices in Holland, in Belgium, in other places of the world that are doing renewable energy with success? They're doing hydraulic systems. How can we use more of the wind energy? I think that we have a lot to learn, but that'll take time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think the most important message that I want to convey is that we are all in this together. This is one planet. We're facing serious challenges because of climate change. Puerto Rico was victim of climate change with Hurricane Maria. Anyone else across the United States, in the Caribbean, or anywhere in the world can be a victim too. And our story is a story of resilience. We're still in the process of recovery, but we need to prepare our audiences, our public, our children to face these challenges associated with climate change. Either it's because of a catastrophic hurricane, either because of sea level rise, because of changes in the ecosystems. It doesn't matter. We are in this together, and we have to educate and empower communities to be resilient. It's not only a story of self-reliance, but also of community reliance.